Welcome back to The Critique. Today we're looking at a video commentary called The Second Wave of Woke is Here, which argues that a resurgence in progressive ideology is actually a spiritual event.
Yeah, I'm ready. This one is fascinating because it's trying to be two things at once. It wants to be this snappy, aggressive political reaction video, but also a really deep theological warning.
And that friction is the problem.
I think that's where most of the trouble is, yeah.
It really struck me. You know, the creator wants to be this watchman on the wall, all serious and ancient.
Uh-huh.
And then 5 minutes later, it feels like I'm watching just another YouTube roast.
Right. And that brings us, I think, to our first major critique, the tonal consistency.
Or the lack of it.
Exact. The tension between wanting that serious spiritual authority and then using, I guess, internet humor.
Okay, let's drill down on that. Because the first few minutes, the vibe is incredibly heavy. I mean, we are not talking about bad policies here.
No, not at all.
The creator is citing David Wilkerson's 1976 vision of calamity. They're quoting the prophet Nahum.
The vocabulary is abominations, demonic.
Flood of filth.
Yeah.
And for context, quoting David Wilkerson, that's not a small thing in this space. It's foundational.
Right.
When you invoke Wilkerson, you're telling your audience, okay, put on your spiritual armor, we are going to war. You are priming them for gravity.
And then
The floor just drops out.
the floor drops out completely. We go from the prophet Nahum to a segment comparing Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett to the fictional character Joanna Mann.
And you get phrases like whacked out nutjob leftist and thingy thing.
It was so jarring. I remember just sitting there thinking, wait a minute, are we analyzing the end of the Western world, or are we just making fun of how somebody looks?
It's just cognitive dissonance. I mean, you can't ask your listener to put on the armor of God in one breath.
And then ask them to laugh at a meme in the next. You just can't.
When you do that, you're basically signaling that you don't even take the threat as seriously as you say you do.
Exactly. If it's a spiritual war, you need to act like a soldier, not a heckler. It's like a preacher giving this fire and brimstone sermon and then pulling out a whoopee cushion.
It just deflates the entire room.
Completely.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate for a second.
Go for it.
Couldn't you argue that mockery is a valid tool? I mean, scripturally, you have Elijah mocking the prophets of Baal. Maybe the humor is supposed to break the tension or show that evil is ridiculous.
That's a fair pushback, and mockery can be a tool, but you have to look at the type of mockery.
Okay.
Elijah mocked the impotence of their gods. He attacked their theology. He didn't make fun of their haircuts.
Mm-hmm.
The issue here is that the humor in this script, calling people nut jobs, the visual comparisons, it's petty, it feels small. And when you're dealing with demonic principalities, you really can't afford to look petty.
It makes the whole apocalypse thing seem less scary.
And it makes the commentators seem less authoritative.
So if I'm the writer, how do I fix that? I mean, they obviously want to critique Jasmine Crockett. You don't want to cut the segment. How do you keep it but fix the tone?
You have to elevate the critique to match that intro. So instead of the visual gag, which is, it's low-hanging fruit,
Right.
focus only on the substance of her comments. She talks about being a champion for the LGBTQIA+ community. So you take that statement and you contrast it directly with the biblical verses you mentioned earlier.
So instead of a joke, you make a connection.
Precisely. You connect her statement, "I have been a champion for all the letters," directly to that Wilkerson quote about confusion or moral landslide.
Okay.
You say something like, this isn't just political posturing. This is the confusion Wilkerson warned us about, manifested in the halls of power. Now the critique is theological. It treats her like a real spiritual adversary, not a cartoon punchline.
That makes so much more sense. It actually makes the opponent seem, scarier, which helps the main thesis. What about the language? The thingy thing stuff.
Oh, that has to go. If you want to be a prophet, speak like one.
Right.
Replace whacked out nutjob with something precise, like ideologically captured. Instead of thingy thing, use secular dogma. It frames the opposition as a serious philosophical threat. It elevates the whole thing from a reaction video to a cultural treatise.
Okay, so we're tightening the voice, ditching memes for theology. But that lack of tonal discipline, it kind of bleeds into a structural problem, doesn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely does. And that leads us right into our second critique, structuring the argumentative thread.
Yeah, when I was watching the clip selection, it felt a bit like a playlist. Like I'm just scrolling through a Twitter feed.
Yeah.
We have this woman, Catherine, on white guilt, then Wilkerson, then an art teacher on ice, then Adam Sheff.
It's very modular, and the host claims these are all evidence of the second wave, but the connective tissue is so thin, it forces the audience to do all the heavy lifting.
Let's talk about that art teacher clip because that transition felt really bumpy to me.
It's the bumpiest part of the whole video. I mean, think about the stakes we just established. We just heard Wilkerson talking about blood in the streets, national collapse. Then, cut to an art teacher crying a single tear because she got fired for talking about Wayfair beds and ICE agents.
It's a massive step down. We went from the end of days to, an HR violation?
Exact. And the host's commentary is just mocking her for crying. Oh, look at the liberal tears. But here's the problem. Is this teacher demonic or is she just annoying? The script doesn't bridge that gap.
No, it leaves you wondering, why are we watching this random lady right after a prophecy about doom?
So how do we weave that golden thread? How do you make that clip feel like it belongs in a video about the apocalypse?
You have to use your thesis as a filter for every single piece of narration. You can't just react to the clip. You have to interpret it.
Okay, give me an example. How would you narrate that transition? All right, so in the clip, the teacher mentions, she said ICE agents should be killed. She's justifying violence. The host totally ignores that to focus on the crying.
Right.
Instead, you grab onto that violence, you link it back to the intro.
So say something like, Wilkerson predicted a spirit of violence would take over. Yes, but go deeper. Say something like, Wilkerson warned that a nation signals its end when it embraces violence. And here we have an educator, responsible for children, who feels morally justified in calling for the death of federal agents.
Okay. This isn't just a political disagreement. This is the violence the prophecy warned us about, now manifesting in our elementary school.
Oh, wow. That completely changes the framing.
Right? All of a sudden, she's not just some crying lady. She's a symptom of the second wave. She's proof of the prophecy.
And you could do that with the political clips, too, with Adam Schiff.
Absolutely. When you bring up Schiff, don't just treat him as, that politician we don't like. Create a callback. Refer back to the opening point about domestic terror flags. Frame him as the bureaucratic manifestation of the filth Wilkerson described.
So you keep weaving that second wave thesis through every clip.
And the video becomes a cohesive argument, not just a compilation of things that annoyed the host this week.
That brings so much more focus. It stops being, look at this crazy thing, and starts being, look at this evidence.
Exactly. And that brings us to the final and probably the most intellectually difficult part of this script.
The conclusion.
The call to action.
Yeah, I really struggled with this part, honestly, because the video spends, 12 minutes telling me that politics is a dead end. The host says humanity's hands can't fix the culture. The world is passing away. They explicitly say a political solution is a delusion.
And then?
And then immediately after they say, so make sure you vote in the midterms and get involved locally.
It's the classic double bind. It creates a paradox that leaves the viewer completely paralyzed.
I mean, you've just convinced me the system is demonic and the prophecy of destruction is inevitable. So why am I voting? Why rearrange deck chairs on the Titanic?
But on the other side of that coin, if voting works, then all that stuff about the inevitable apocalypse was just hyperbole.
Right. If I can fix it with a ballot, it's not the end times.
So the viewer is left asking, is the world ending, or do I just need to elect a different senator? It dilutes the urgency of both messages.
But the creator can't just tell people not to vote, can they? I mean, political mobilization is clearly part of the goal. So how do you resolve that tension without sounding like a hypocrite?
You have to synthesize the spiritual and the political into a single worldview. You don't have to choose between God's control and human action, but you have to frame the human action differently. You have to change the why.
Reframe the motivation.
Yes, reframe voting not as a solution, because that contradicts your spiritual point, but as an act of stewardship, or maybe restraint.
Okay, I like that word, restraint. Unpack that for me.
Well, the host could argue that while God is in control and the world may be on a downward path, the believer's duty is to occupy until he comes.
So the script could say something like, we vote not because it saves the world, but because it holds back the tide.
That is the perfect way to put it. We vote to hold back the tide. The script could even offer specific spiritual criteria for candidates.
So instead of a generic go out and vote, which feels very secular, the host could say, we know this world is passing away, but we are called to be salt and light. Voting against the filth Wilkerson described is how we act as a restraining force against evil in our time. We don't vote to save the nation. We vote to testify against the darkness.
There you go. That is the unlock. Suddenly, you're not just a guy ranting at a webcam, you're offering a theological framework for political action. And that is so much more satisfying.
It harmonizes the entire message.
It turns a contradiction into a complex, mature theological stance. And for this audience, that coherence is what separates the noise from the signal.
It also respects their intelligence, right? It assumes they can handle a nuanced reason for action.
Spot on. Look, this piece has a lot of passion, a very clear audience. But right now, it's tripping over its own feet. If it irons out these issues, it can go from a rant to a revelation.
Okay, so let's recap the big three for our listener.
Tonal discipline. If you invoke the prophets, you can't behave like a troll. Lose the memes, keep the gravity.
The golden thread. Don't just show random clips. Use your narration to explicitly link every single video back to your main thesis of spiritual warfare. And number 3, resolve the paradox. Don't sell doom and then ask for a vote. Frame political action as spiritual stewardship so your conclusion actually makes sense with your introduction.
We would love to see how these changes impact the flow. We invite the listener to apply these adjustments, rewrite those transitions, fix that ending, and submit the revised script for a follow-up look. It has great bones. Now let's just make sure the structure holds up. Thank you for listening to The Critique.